To introduce myself, my name is Alayna Milby. I am the Ethical Purchasing Program Coordinator with Ethics Merch. I co-lead this program with Grace. As I mentioned, Grace will be doing the afternoon session. I believe some of you have gotten to meet Grace or have gotten to talk with her over email as well. But we're the CEPA duo. And so Ethics partners with the Ignatian Solidarity Network, which is a Catholic, specifically Jesuit organization, a nonprofit. And we really have come together to form CEPA, which is the Catholic Ethical Purchasing Alliance. But you will hear me just refer to it as CEPA throughout this. A little more information about me. I started at Ethics Merch in 2021, which is when CEPA was created. I was hired specifically to build out this program. And then Grace joined in 2022 on ISN's side of it. And that's when we really saw CEPA grow and expand. And I'll talk more about all the schools that we work with as well. And so my role, while Grace and I definitely, I think, do a really good job of balancing the work within CEPA, I work on the product end of our program. So Ethics is a distributor for promotional products, and we focus specifically on workers' rights, environmental sustainability, and so our CEPA program really highlights those partners and those vendors that we work with. Our other clients are unions, nonprofits, organizations, political campaigns, all kinds of different clients. And essentially, CEPA was born out of one, we recognized we were already working with a lot of Catholic institutions. And then along with ISN's connections, we were able to really grow that impact because they have a lot of close relationships with Catholic institutions. So what to expect, kind of our objectives or the things that I'll be covering today is explaining CEPA, what we consider to be an ethical vendor. We throw out the word ethical a lot, or sustainable, and we realize folks have different definitions of that. So we'll define it for what it means to be ethical within CEPA. Understanding how bookstores operate and why we work with bookstores. What does CEPA advocacy look like on other campuses? We'll actually have somebody joining us from Mercyhurst who has a steering committee / a club, ethical purchasing club that's been established on their campus. So they're going to share what it looks like and what successes look like for them. And then we'll give ideas and suggestions for what purchasing and advocacy could look like on your campus, because we recognize everyone's different. And so we're very adaptable in that way.
So going into CEPA and who we are. So like I said before, we're a collaborative project between the Ignatian Solidarity Network and Ethics Merch. We really aim to give support to institutions that are seeking to integrate their values into their actions, especially around purchasing. And we want to do this in a few ways. We really found that a lot of Catholic institutions were actually really interested in purchasing ethically. A lot of this, I think, surrounds a lot of the values that we'll talk about too, surrounding in Catholic social teaching, and then also in the values and charisms of schools that, identify as Catholic or as Jesuit or with an order like Sisters of Mercy, or, a lot of these different orders that have critical concerns and charisms that value people and the planet, and really wanting to find ways to live out these actionable items. So we really wanted to find a way to connect these institutions with these vendors and with these partners that also have these shared values with these institutions. And we want to do this in various ways. So we want to look at sort of these four key components that we have. So looking at how can we create opportunities for organizing and advocacy training on ethical purchasing policies. So this can look like how can we promote leadership opportunities for both students, staff, and faculty to either engage, ask their institution to engage more fully on their purchasing policies, or to even change them, to even look deeper at what are their purchasing policies, especially with other companies that they might be working with, and how can we work with those policies to reflect the mission and value statements, of that institution that we're working in. We also offer networking and mentorship. We see this as a real value to this program. So over the past 3 years of this program being rolled out, we've had various interns who have worked with us, who have actually done a ton of key work, especially on the ground at many of their institutions, in bringing ethical purchasing education and options to their campus. We also want to provide networking opportunities. We really see this as an alliance, and that there is more power when universities and high schools are connected to each other, and have opportunities to engage with one another around this shared, work and shared value system that they're all, passionate about. So we do that in a lot of different ways. Things like this. We hope to kind of bring schools together, bring institutions together. We also host immersion trips as well to some of our partners, both in Los Angeles as well as in North Carolina, who are some of our main where some of our main vendors come from. And those immersions are really wonderful too, because they can offer many institutions to sort of gather and be present at them and work together in going back to their campus to bring purchasing policies and practices back there. We also want to establish ethical purchasing values and expectations. So what this really means is really looking at what are these institutions that we're in, what are their mission statements, what are their value statements, and how is that aligning with their actions, especially in purchasing. How are they aligning, their identity as a Catholic or Jesuit university, and how is that reflecting what their current purchasing policies are or practices are. And we really want to be able to provide those values and expectations around connecting the two together so that, our actions can meet our values as well. And we also want to create effective purchasing platforms. So that's a lot of what Alayna does, especially, and what Ethics Merch does quite a bit of as well, is really allowing these platforms to become accessible for individuals to order from, for larger departments and programs to order from. So really creating an effective platform to be able to connect with these vendors, have relationships with them, and easily be able to connect and order from them. So that's been a really key, especially working with Ethics Merch, a really key partnership in just the connection to a lot of these vendors and partners that we're not always really aware of, and can actually be sometimes really hard to find and really hard to understand how a company works and what their ethics and values really are, and how they live those out. So that's what we really try to do. So what I like to say a lot is that CEPA really brings sort of a twofold in this program. There's purchasing opportunities, so having these platforms to purchase and these vendors to purchase from. But there's also this education and advocacy aspect as well that we find incredibly important and vital to this program, and really building up leadership around purchasing at an institution as well, and really giving whatever resources we're able to give to support that sort of work and initiatives happening. And so I hope today too, especially when we have Bryce from Mercyhurst, we'll be able to kind of see some of that connection as well in what this can look like at some schools.
When it working within these bigger systems, especially when we're involving the bookstores, when we're talking about licensing, when we're talking about, being able to get or print a university's logo, which I know We have some folks from high schools on these calls as well, but and they're sometimes a bit lenient, but every school is different. And but when it comes to making sure that we follow all the rules and get all of our I's dotted and T's crossed to make sure we have the license to print and everything, I come in with a lot of that. So we, I think, kind of make it easy for folks, right? Because we have that experience and that knowledge.
So kind of, yeah, going into a little bit of CEPA and really where a lot of our values and mission sort of come from. So we really look to Catholic social teaching, which has been a really core element in the church on how individuals, and larger institutions are really called to act within the world and within one another, especially when issues of injustice come about. So we really want to look at a few of the tenets. There are about 7 tenets of Catholic social teaching. When we're talking about ethical purchasing, this is where we really draw a lot of our passion and a lot of our inspiration from when looking at how do we care for people and the planet in this work. So we really look at, life and dignity of the whole person and looking at that human life is sacred and has dignity. And that's really a starting point that, people throughout their entire lives have dignity that has to be protected and upheld in our world and in our communities. We then really look towards the dignity of work and the rights of workers. So this has been a really key aspect for us, especially because of the distinction between dignity of work and also the dignity and rights of workers. So we really see that the church tells us that there is dignity to the work that we do, that it needs to be, life-giving to the person and also supportive in their own lives for themselves and those they love and care for. But then also the rights of workers as well, and that workers have a right to productive work, as well as fair wages and the right to organize and join unions and other types of worker associations. And so these are really important for us, and is a core element of where we pull, again, a lot of this work from, especially when working with worker advocacy within ethical purchasing and how the people behind, our products and our clothing, what are their what does their life look like within their work, and is it something that matches what the Catholic social teaching and the church calls of us. We also want to look at care for God's creation. So really that this call that we're here to protect people and the planet, and that we have a relationship with the earth and the world around us. Pope Francis, about 12 years ago, came out with an encyclical called Laudato Si that really emphasizes a lot of this relationship, that we have a relationship to the earth, and then also a responsibility in that relationship to care for it. And so we really, Pope Francis talked about a term called integral ecology, which is that people and planet are inherently connected to one another. So really, when the planet is hurting, we're going to see that people are hurting, and vice versa. So this has been a really key aspect too, especially, which we'll talk about, but sort of the weight that the world is carrying from a lot of our products and consumerism, and things like that. And what does that mean for individuals and institutions that may identify as Catholic? What does that mean when it comes to their purchasing and how that's supposed to look or change? So that's where we are going to kind of come into more on some of the reality of what the garment industry looks like right now, but and what that means for us when we're talking about what does ethical purchasing mean, and what do we call ethical, when working with a specific vendor or business. So this could really be, I think looking at the reality of the garment industry could really be like a whole separate webinar and session. So it is definitely, we're not going to spend a ton of time on the current reality, but I think it's important to give some perspective, especially when talking about some of our CEPA partners who are really, really wonderful partners that are doing a lot of great work in the protection of people on the planet. But I think it's important to look at what, a lot of the reality is when we're talking about the comparison to who we're working with and what, ethical purchasing can look like. So for us, for CEPA, we're going to work very specifically with regional production. So we're going to work with businesses and with vendors who really value regional, localized production, and this means production throughout their entire supply chain. So the life cycle of something like a T-shirt can have between 12 and 15 steps to it in the way that it's created, and we want to work with vendors who are going to do all 15 of those steps in their region or in their country as well. So we do really focus on USA made clothing, especially, with the vendors we're partnering with. This focus on, USA made clothing isn't really for sort of like nationalistic or patriotic reasons of, that US can make better clothing than, someplace like Bangladesh. But it's really for this environmental sustainability and transparency in the supply chain of really trying to bring production down to a regional level. I think you can see towards the bottom under the global production that clothing can travel at an average of 35,000 miles. So you can have clothing where different steps of, that process are being done all over the world, causing, carbon emission rates from international flights and global shipping to just be huge compared to regional production, where we're often seeing if we can work in a supply chain that's regional right here in the US, we're looking at an average clothing traveling at an average of about 775 miles. So just the difference right there in just carbon emission rates and carbon footprint from the travel of clothing gets cut to just a completely different number than the globalized one. So that's really, really important for us. Like I said, too, regional production does offer us a little more oversight over facility practices and policies compared to a lot of the reality today of garments being made in all different places in the world, so you could have, your garment being spun maybe in one country, but then it's going to be cut and sewn in another country, maybe dyed and printed in one before it comes to the US. So it kind of creates this, confusion around, exactly where is our clothing going, and also who's doing the work. It kind of creates a little bit of confusion there where we can't track as easily what is happening in this supply chain. So regional production is also really important for that it's easier to track. We have more oversight around our facilities that we're going to be working with and what their policies are. We also want our vendors and businesses to be really conscious around what their imprint on the earth is going to be from their production. So looking at, do they have conscious waste practices and recycling options? We have one vendor who often calls this like having an end of life plan for your t-shirt. So they often work with another vendor who will recycle your t-shirt to make something new, or recycle socks to make new socks. We call that sometimes circularity or a circular economy. So ultimately never making a new product. Which is really key, especially when looking at our larger consumption, practices. Of something that's not on here is that, we're consuming clothing at a rate of 400% more than we were about 20 years ago. So there is this level, especially in the apparel industry, of consumption where our earth is really struggling to keep up, with the amount that's being made and the amount that's being purchased, but then also thrown away. So we really love working, with vendors that have that sort of like insight into, what is going to happen to this product when we're done using it. And then we also want to support small businesses, which has been a really wonderful opportunity as well with CEPA, to work with a lot of vendors who do a lot of really specialized, skilled labor in the apparel industry here in the U.S. And being able to find ways to connect them and support them, again with institutions that are going to share the same values, a lot of the same values at least that they do around what should a supply chain that values people and the planet really look like.
And then from a workers' rights standpoint, which of course we find to be the utmost importance. We can't worry about the environment if we're not worried about how the people are being affected, right, by environmental devastation. So when looking for or what we look for in our vendors is either union representation in factories, worker-owned cooperatives, opportunity threads, which I've already mentioned is a worker-owned cooperative, meaning that in which, I mean, we could do a whole 1 hour just talking about co-ops, but a worker-owned cooperative means that the employees have not only a say in the treatment and the benefits that they get, but they actually have a like financial benefits within the company as well. So they're like worker owners of the company. And then if we work with a vendor that isn't union or a co-op, they have disclosed the pay and the benefits of their workers. And so we have surveys that we send out, and the vendors that we work with complete that. So what we're looking for is that transparency. And so, obviously like unions do a lot for workers, so do those co-ops. But at the bare minimum, we're looking for that transparency, and the vendors that we work with provide that to us. We're able to see that safety conditions are more closely monitored. It's a really hard thing to do whenever facilities are overseas. And then we do have stronger laws and regulations in the US. By no means is it perfect. There's definitely a lot of changes and improvements that could be made. We will be the first ones to acknowledge that, and we advocate for that. But the US definitely does have stronger workers protections than other countries, and especially countries that the majority of our clothing is being produced in. And so, what folks find are, so looking at the global production for other products is child labor being used, or forced labor being used within these facilities, unsafe working conditions. There's multiple examples of this throughout throughout history, and not even that long ago, of factories collapsing, of fires happening, and workers not being able to get out. Bangladesh, which is one of the main textile manufacturers, has one of the lowest minimum wages in the world for garment workers. And this is even taking into account cost of living, because that is often a question that folks have, or something that they point out, right? Whenever we're comparing the US and how they pay their workers, or how we pay our workers versus Bangladesh or another country. And you can take cost of living into effect, and these are still jobs that folks are not able to pay their bills on. These are not actually really good jobs that we're offering, and they could be. They could be if only these larger brands would compromise some of their profits for it. So it's kind of the difference between, right, what we're looking for, what we offer with our products versus what we generally see, or as I put here, the other guys. So who runs your college bookstore? Obviously this is specific to colleges and universities versus high schools, as high schools almost generally run their own bookstore. And so We work with universities that have a bunch of different all of these kind of controlled groups. So we work with Follett, we work with Barnes and Noble, independent bookstores, and then also textbook brokers. But as you can tell, the vast majority of the bookstores are ran by either Follett or Barnes and Noble. And so essentially the folks that are deciding what goes into your bookstore, what's being sold, are not folks who live on the campus, who go to the campus, who maybe even live in the state that your campus is in. And so, a lot of the work that CEPA does is kind of being that middle person between the bookstore and Follett and the campus, right? To get these values being represented in the products. And so it's definitely been a lot of work. It continues to be a lot of work, but we have seen a lot of successes with it. I think maybe one way we could improve this pie chart is actually to list out which universities are being controlled by what organization. But essentially what we work towards and what we like to see, right, is to go to Follett, go to Barnes and Noble and express, right, like, hey, this is what the university is asking for. Ideally, we have someone from the university doing this with us, and saying, like, we make it easy for you. We've done all of the research on the vendors, the products, and we're able to say, like, yes, this is ethically made.
So I wanted to kind of talk about too, a lot about this advocacy piece, because purchasing is a really big part of that, actually, changing the way that an institution that might have a lot of purchasing power, changing the way that they do that is a pretty key, aspect to a lot of this work. But there's also a lot more to be done. It doesn't end there. In a lot of ways, it really begins there, but there's a lot of work to keep this momentum happening and to really change your campus community and culture in the way that we think about consumption practices and the way we order things, and what we expect out of our products. And how does that align with our mission and values? So this is a lot of our ladder of engagement, specifically for individuals, and how individuals can really engage here with CEPA, but also with ethical purchasing, and ways to get involved with that.
And so with steering committee members, we're looking for consistent contact with CEPA coordinators, which are Grace and I. Regularly attend steering committee meetings. And it might be helpful for me to slow down a bit and explain what a steering committee is. But essentially, it's a group of folks on a specific campus or a specific high school that are coming together to advance these common goals, right, of improving environmental sustainability and workers' rights through purchasing. And so we just we just use the term steering committee, but maybe that's a club or another type of group, whatever folks want to call it or find that works for them. But essentially, we're just looking for that group of folks, those like-minded folks that want to work towards these efforts. And then Grace and I are here to do that work with you. And we have these committees across multiple campuses of our CEPA partners. And then we also have steering committee members who represent CEPA at campus events. So whether that's tabling or we've had students do classroom presentations, we've aligned as well with other like maybe established groups as well. So whenever folks have like maybe a environmental club or like Students Against Sweatshops type of group, we've also worked with like student government and different groups like that as well. And then a SC leader, a steering committee leader, is someone who has really kind of stepped up and taken that leadership role on a steering committee. So maybe invites other folks to join the steering committee, plans those meetings, sets the agenda, sets the dates. And then, yeah, really works as an advocate to get more purchasing to happen across campus, right? So kind of expanding outside of maybe just the circle that they're in. And I believe we'll have time for questions at the end. So if folks are thinking of anything as I'm going through this, please go ahead and put that in the chat. Put any questions you have in the chat, and I will answer them at the end. And so I've referenced some of these kind of action items, things that folks, would possibly be able to do on their campus. But here are some of them listed out. So things that we're looking for, departmental or club orders, right? We know a lot of departments, clubs, different organizations at school make these purchases, right? They're getting t-shirts for orientation or t-shirts for a trip, homecoming, all kinds of things, right? We know schools give out a lot of t-shirts, and if just a few departments on campus, who align with these values, would like to kind of shift and find these more ethical vendors. We've done that. We found the vendors. I think a lot of groups want to do this, want to make these more intentional, mindful purchases. They just don't have the connections or the resources, or they don't know where to start. It's kind of a hard thing to Google, to be honest. And so that's what we're here to provide. That's what CEPA provides, right? We've done all the hard work. We can find those vendors to find that product that matches the value or the values of the folks that are wanting to make those purchases. Request a purchasing policy that reflects these values. An institution-wide policy, like we know that's no small feat, but maybe it's a policy that could be done within a program or a club, and then eventually get their way to being a campus-wide policy. A lot of schools have these already, actually. They've just don't they don't really have any teeth behind it. They're kind of difficult to enforce. And ideally CEPA can be an asset to making that goal being acquired. And then offer educational sessions on CEPA. So that could look like classroom or club presentations, different events, tabling events. A lot of universities have different annual events that go on their campuses that the CEPA values would really align with. So we've done, different social justice workshops or events with Villanova, with St. Louis University. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. We've done like Earth Day or Earth Week. That is often a popular time to incorporate CEPA. We've done that with Xavier University for multiple years as well. So as I've mentioned, this looks different on every campus. And this is what having a steering committee is so important to our goals, is because we have to hear, right, what folks are doing on the campus and what the campus is doing. It looks so different everywhere. And so, these are just some ideas. We're always open to hearing new ideas from from different schools. And Grace and I work really collaboratively on that. So we can provide ideas and share what other schools have done, but we always like to hear what the ideas folks have for their campus specifically.
I wanted to give, we're calling this an activity. We're not going to do this right now. Again, if you'd like to screenshot this, feel free or write it down. Again, it'll be in the recording as well that we'll send out. But this is something we really like to do, especially with groups that we work with, whether it's steering committees who are just starting out or immersion groups as well. But it's to create an outreach plan. I think it's a really good way to sort of like get started and really think about what are my goals? What do I know about my campus and how can I apply that to the goals I want to see in purchasing? So we really advocate for creating an outline of it, like an outreach plan for purchasing on campuses, or building a steering committee, getting started there. So with that, we really like to look at who do you reach out to get involved. So do you look to, can you find out who your procurement officer is, who your purchasing manager is, kind of looking at those levels of, decision makers, who's making decisions for purchasing items and how do I get in touch with them. And then also, I think it's really great to just be prepared with sort of a elevator pitch around ethical purchasing and preparing, what am I going to say to people to want to get them involved or understand why this is important for my campus to be involved in. And then I think it's really great to think about what outcomes do you want to see. And I really love when working with groups to have groups start from like really, really big ideas, big ideas with like no boundaries, no issues getting these goals, even if there are issues to getting them, but starting really big and then being able to come down to these smaller goals that you can see tangible success with, over time, to ultimately get you to your larger goal. So yeah, like I said, please, we're not going to do it right now, but yeah, copy this, take a screenshot. We would love for you to like bring it home, and bring it to your group or your campus as well to sort of help get started with some of this work.
Maggie, if you're ready, I'm going to let you, share a bit about Mercyhurst and what you all are doing with the steering committee over there.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Hi. Okay. Yeah, so I'm Maggie. I am the vice president of the Ethical Purchasing Club at Mercyhurst. Very exciting. We just started like a month ago, but we've already done like a lot of work that's really exciting. So I can't wait to talk to you guys. Did you have any questions for me, or do you want to just let me like go off for a minute?
So I have the questions that Grace had come up with.
Okay,
So I can get you started, and then
sure,
if you think of something else, that's also fine.
sure.
But basically, what got you interested in the issues around ethical purchasing?
So actually, what I immediately think of is I think back to last year. I had Catholicism and social justice with my professor, Dr. Pine. Um, and Grace Adams came into our class and talked to us a little bit about CEPA. And being in environmental science, it was sustainability is something you always kind of think about, but I don't think I really had the vocabulary and the knowledge of what really goes into ethical purchasing. And her coming into class kind of piqued my interest and really let me know that it was something that everyone can get involved in. But this year was when I think my little network at school, my little sustainability group, kind of made it aware to me that this was something everyone was interested in. So Bryce, who's the president, she brought it to my attention that this was something that we were going to get off the ground. And I'm already kind of involved in other sustainability spaces like the Sustainability Club. So I was like, of course, I'll get myself involved in this. So it's something that I've always been interested in, but I didn't really know for sure that like this was something doable until we all in our space kind of made it clear that we could do it and get it done.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, and you kind of touched a little bit on it, but if there's more that you'd want to share about like steps in forming the club and doing
Yeah.
outreach for it.
Yes. I think one of the things that I've kind of gotten used to in being in a leadership position, with clubs, especially, is getting involvement and awareness out about sustainability. And I think the biggest thing to get people interested in it is social media. I think like really hammering it home to people that this is something that everyone really should be concerned about, is super important. Um, and I think we've seen it's been very clear to us, with attendance over the course of our 3 meetings so far, that it really is something that people are passionate about, knowing where it is specifically that the things we're consuming are coming from. So honestly, as much as we've like really worked hard to try and show how important this is, it once you get the ball rolling, I think word of mouth, um, does a lot of work for you to get people interested. Um, I think the other thing too is, there are so many ways that ethical purchasing can be applied to other fields on campus. So we've been working hard to work with other clubs, work with MSG, like our treasury and Res Life, to get the word out about our club. Um, so almost like being able to have the confidence to know that, people who typically aren't interested in something like this, like you can convince them. It is possible. So making sure you put your fingers in as many pies as possible is very, very valuable.
Yeah, no, I like that you said that because sometimes it is just, you know, the answer might be no, but it's definitely going to be no if you don't ask.
Exactly.
Yeah, just always ask, never know.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and then the last question I have for you are, what are some goals of the club, and where would you like to see it after you graduate from Mercyhurst?
That's a good question. So next year will be my senior year. So I won't have, as much time as I would like to establish the club. Um, but my hope is that we can kind of push past that barrier of interest that I was talking about, with people who aren't typically, involved in awareness and sustainability. So I would hope that we could see, places like our bookstore or our dining halls, broadcasting, where we're sourcing things, so that everybody on campus is aware of it. Having that awareness in everyone would be so cool. Getting everybody to care about where our products and where our food is sourced, that would be amazing. I think just having our campus as a whole be a more, sustainable and ethical place would be the absolute dream, I think.
So Bryce, I want to give you some time, a few minutes to just talk a little bit about Mercyhurst and the recent development of the Ethical Purchasing Club on campus, because you all like went through the process of making this like an official club at your university, which is really exciting. So I just wanted to start, with asking about tell us, a little bit about yourself, who you are, but then why did you want to get involved in this also?
Thanks, Grace. So, A little bit about myself. My name is Bryce Hanson. I go to Mercyhurst. I'm a junior, and I'm a sustainability and environmental science major, which goes really well with all the things that ethical purchasing is about. I'm really passionate about all those things. I think my passion for those things kind of started during COVID when I finally had time to like sit down and really think like what do I care about? And something that I really attached to during that time was caring about the environment. And so my journey with ethical purchasing definitely started with the environment and specifically with food. I went for a time where I didn't eat meat and dairy, like kind of went through that whole phase, trying to figure out how can I navigate this world of food in an ethical way when so many things about the food system is just completely ravaging the environment. And so then kind of as I got more into the environment and got a little more educated, I realized that there's so much more than just the food system that's affecting our environment. And so I got really passionate about the clothes that I bought or the toothpaste that I bought. Does it have microplastics in it? Just all those different things. And then kind of once I got to college and started learning a bit more about sustainability and how the things that we buy not only affect the environment, but they also have such a massive social impact. That just kind of that just increased my passion more than anything because I've always been a people person. I love people, and the fact that something that I buy could like have a negative effect on someone else, like who am I to be so privileged to just throw my money around while they're offering? Like, so it just made me even more passionate about it. And so once we kind of got the framework around this club, I knew it was something that I needed to be a part of because it was something that I've known about for a long time and I've been passionate about for a really long time. So kind of how our club got started on campus, I was in a Catholic social teaching class with a religious studies professor, Dr. Pine, and she brought Grace in to do a presentation in our class. And she talked about like what an ethical purchase is and why when you go to a Catholic institution, you can kind of hold the gun to your institution, be like, okay, you say these values are what you believe in, now show it. And I was like, wow, that is a really cool opportunity. Like we can really hold them accountable to the values that they say that they have. And so I just kind of thought it was going to be an educational presentation. I didn't know that there was really going to be any opportunities that came with it, but then I went to lunch after the class with them just to kind of learn more about it. And they started talking super seriously about getting a steering committee on our campus because our campus does have a sustainability plan where we're trying to incorporate a lot of different things, make our campus more sustainable, eco-friendly, all of the above. And so they wanted to be a part of this organization and they wanted to have a student-led aspect of our sustainability plan where we can really investigate what ethical purchasing is and try to make some changes on our campus. So kind of we got a steering committee started and it was this past spring that we got a steering committee started. We kind of got the interest of a few members and then over the summer we kind of did a little bit of recruiting. I went to a conference where I kind of made an action plan for our club, kind of what we wanted the next year to look like, and then we kind of just made everything happen. So far we've had 2 meetings, and I would say the biggest thing about those 2 meetings is kind of education at this point. We need to know what we're advocating for before we just go gung-ho for it. So the first meeting we introduced like the idea of what ethical purchasing is, and we kind of identified different problem areas on campus. So for now, we're choosing to focus mostly on our bookstore and on our cafeteria. And so, yeah, does that kind of answer your question? Do you want me to say any more?
No, that's great, Bryce. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
of course.
awesome. And Bryce is, I'm sorry if I missed if you said this, but the president too of the club. So you've been
Yes.
really active, in bringing a lot of these ideas and also a lot of, the framework of how the club is going to operate and the goals of the
Mhm.
club, which is really, really exciting. So, so thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and our meetings
have gone from 5 members to 12 members to now we're getting emails from different people. Actually, different people who work in the cafeteria or work in the bookstore are like emailing us wanting to attend our meetings to kind of like see what we're saying about them, maybe like advocate for themselves a little bit, but also to educate us about what they're doing. And so we're really just trying to increase knowledge about ethical purchasing on campus, getting people to care about it and getting them to understand why it matters for us as an institution and also us as individuals. And then we're trying to establish relationships with all the purchasers on our campus and just trying to increase transparency so we can at least understand where our university stands at this point. Are we sourcing ethically or not? And then we'll kind of go from there. So
it's awesome. Thank you so much. And this has been work that's really been happening too at Mercyhurst for, I'd say, over the past 2 years now of, these connections with, Professor Pine, who I spoke in class with and got to connect with you all in, which has been really great. So it's kind of, going back to that ladder of engagement, these opportunities, of kind of following, a pattern of just bringing this information closer, connecting with individuals and allies, and then with the larger campus community. So thank you so much, Bryce. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I do have one more thing.
Yeah, please.
I think it can be really intimidating. Like when we got this club started, it's kind of just like, where do we start? But there really is no perfect way to start. It's kind of just about getting some interest first and then education. I would say just start with education. It can be really tough to just think, oh, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this. Like start small, start with a bunch of passionate people who all want the same thing as you. And then once you get that good group, it's a lot of fun along the way too. So
awesome. Thank you again. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To kind of finish this out, we still have a few minutes though, if folks do have any questions for me. But here's how you can stay in touch with me and Grace. You should have our emails already, but if not, here they are. Again, you can also check out the CEPA website by typing ethicalcatholic.org. You can also find it through the Ignatian Solidarity Network website if that's an organization that you're already quite familiar with. But we also have a newsletter that we send out. It's not every month. I think we're very mindful. I keep using that word, and very reasonable when it comes to our email list, but we do have a newsletter that you can join where you can see, what we're doing at different schools, what different vendors we're highlighting. Project Repat has been in multiple of them. Just going to continue to shout y'all out. But yeah.
So you can contact Alayna or I. Our emails are right there. Alayna can definitely help if you're really interested in putting in an order for something, doing a purchase. They can really help with that. But both of us really we work together every single day. So we're very connected. If you're looking for any engagement opportunities, purchasing opportunities, please let us know. And please check out our website as well, which is that QR code there, which will really give you, an idea of who our vendors are. And it's also where our resources are going to be. So this webinar is going to be posted on there. So if you want to come back to it or share it with colleagues or individuals, please feel free to do that as well. But I wanted to end just by thanking Bryce so much. Thank you for coming on and talking a little bit about the club and about your leadership with it. And then also thanking you all for your time. I really appreciate you all being here today, and I hope to hear from you all soon and in the future. And feel free to email me with any questions and things that came up during this. But thank you all so much.